So the date is the 31st of August, 2017. It's in the morning, 9:49 a.m. And this is Hayley, and I am speaking with Yashoda Devi Ma.
Hello.
So my intention with this session is to be present in this conversation while also tuning into my teacher listening and completing this assignment, and ideally creating this container so that I can potentially share it with other people as well.
Beautiful.
So to introduce Yashoda, I studied meditation with you 1.5 years ago, and she teaches a very beautiful and basic and graceful form of meditation called Vedic meditation. And we are here in Boulder, and she lives in Boulder. And she's been teaching for 15 years, 14?
I have been doing the technique for 14 years and teaching for the last 4.
Oh, beautiful.
It seems longer.
Beautiful, wow.
Yeah.
Thank you. Is there anything else you would like to share to introduce yourself?
There's so much that I could say. Is there anything in particular that you desire for?
Yeah, so my first question actually is, can you please share with me the pearls of your background and your path?
Perfect. There's so much, many different layers coming from my background. I was always somebody who was very much into body. I was an athlete growing up and very much a tomboy. And so body is what really was my teacher. I'm a Taurus Leo, which means you can't really tell me what to do. So I need to figure it out myself. And so very kind of stubborn when I was much younger. And so therefore, thankfully, the body is what could guide me, because listening to other people, even if they were speaking truth to me, I just wouldn't receive it because I wanted to do it. So in that journey of being an athlete and wellness always being my curiosity as a young child, going into physical fitness and the weight room, I wanted to know how to transform and sculpt my body. And luckily I had an amazing, probably I would say, if you're going to say gurus, but my first guru, really my first teacher, was my weights teacher in high school, and he was really well known strength conditioning coach on the West Coast, and later became known for his programs like worldwide. And he was like my papa. I only really cared what he thought, and he was the beginning of teaching me positive thinking. Not that he presented that way. He just had us memorize poems that were like the winner's creed, and that it was all about the state of mind, and that complaining was not allowed, and that you worked from a place of, he was more a little bit, work hard to achieve what it is that you're doing, but stay in a place of positivity. And so I was his little protege all through high school. And then in that, I wanted to know nutrition, and I wanted to know psychology, and I really just wanted to understand the body. I just thought, how could I live life and not know what anything is, how I use things and how I work? And so that was really the planting of the seed to then take me into the lifestyle that I live. And I would say my family, my mom is very much an interesting person. Both my parents that raised me. My father is a good listener, so he was the one that provided me with that compassionate listening and being with people, and a very good teacher he is. And my mother is an interesting person who shifts in and out of being conscious and unconscious. And I would always say, and she would agree with me, she's a witch. She is a witch, and she knows it, and she's very powerful, and then she goes unconscious in it. And so she helped me develop understanding consciousness, when people are in their truth and when they're not in their truth. And that environment, though I found it challenging, is what developed me seeing consciousness. And she came from a farmer's family. So she raised us organic. She raised us all natural in a time, I'll be 40 next year. So in a different generation where that wasn't the trend. And she was very adamant with doctors about not putting us on antibiotics. And she would get fierce with the dentists about putting lead covering over us, things that nobody was doing back then. And so she really displayed this strength and being holistic. And it's not that she ever presented it that way. She used food as healing. She understood holistic concoctions, but you wouldn't know. It wasn't Ayurvedic. She wasn't using a method. It was just she came from a farmer's family, and that's just what you do. And you go to Western medicine when it's needed. And so she taught me that when we're sick, we did do antibiotics. And when we had to, per se, then we did it all the way through. We followed the instructions. We let the body get used to what it needed and become resilient in it. And so I felt like I always had this really good balance of using Western medicine because it's important, when needed, and then being holistic in every other way and understanding eating. And though she was the Western, nutritional pyramid, I understood how to eat well. I understood organic foods versus our family just didn't have fast food. I didn't grow up like that. And though I would have it every once in a while, I could feel the difference of what my body didn't like it. So it just didn't crave it. And so that's the environment that brought me into my 20s of, you're thrown into your 20s and you've got to find what your belief system is and what works for you, if you're lucky to wake up to that and not follow the system. And so in that I discovered, I studied psychology, I studied English, which means I love the mythos, the stories, and all of that. So that was hugely impacted. And I stopped school because I felt Western psychology was limited, and I didn't want to be limited in how I worked with people. And I just felt that wasn't the path for me, and it took me a while. I paused and I worked in fitness. As I worked in fitness, I knew that wasn't what it was supposed to be, but it's what I knew. And it's how I knew I could transform people. And transformation being my biggest passion and kind of obsession. I just love seeing the before and after. As I was doing that work, I came across Louise Hay, which is interesting because she just passed. And I was really fascinated by her work. Her just one particular book, You Can Heal Your Life. And in the middle of that book was my Bible, where she took emotions and linked it with body. And so without my clients really knowing, that's how I started working with them. I would see the blocks that they had in life, because I was their therapist as well. And I would use the things that she had found through her own healing of cancer and whatnot, and these affirmations of positive thinking, and I would work with my clients that way through physical fitness. And they would start healing their bodies, and physical therapists didn't understand, and all these, wow, that's really great. And I would really tell the physical therapist it's their emotions, it's not actually real body pain, and so on and so forth. And in that, living in Los Angeles and Beverly Hills and working with, producers and writers and makeup artists and actors and whatever, I knew that wasn't necessarily the realm I wanted to be in. And it hadn't, life hadn't presented what it was that I wanted to use as my tool. And so again, my body led me. My mind was oversaturated with negative thinking and critical thinking, and I'm a deep thinker, so I just deeply criticize everything to death. And I didn't like that. I knew how to eat right, I knew how to do fitness, I knew how to do all of that stuff, and my mind still felt like garbage, and I didn't like that existence. And so luckily, spontaneously, I came across a guy in a laundromat that then told me about who my guru would become of Vedic meditation, and that all came to me. And literally the week that I was sitting in doing my 4-day course of Vedic meditation, I knew that this is what was going to heal me, and this is how I was going to work with people. And I always knew since a very young child that the mind, if you can master the mind, then you can live life from a different perspective. And living life from a higher perspective is why we're really here, to connect from a clear mind that's deeply a clear vessel to the heart. And if we don't have that link between heart and mind, then we're disjointed and disconnected. And so then my journey began of just accumulating every aspect of Vedic meditation. I feel really honored. I'm one of the few teachers that I feel that's done every layer, every advanced technique, every advanced course, everything that you could possibly do before becoming a teacher, spending large quantity of times in India and actually experiencing directly, and then accumulating all the right knowledge thus far. And there's always more. So that was just the beginning of me moving from body, which is our beginning point in healing, to then moving into consciousness and realizing that it's consciousness that really supersedes body, and it's what moves body. And so when we can enter from that perspective, the rest is history. So that was kind of the forming of the journey of how where I'm at now, of working with mind, body, and then energy.
Mm. So. Thank you.
Yeah.
What a beautiful answer. And I like hearing your past, and because I feel like I only know you now, and so to hear what led you to here is beautiful.
I think it's huge. I think it's really the call of the time for so many of us that really heard the call like decades ago. And we started doing the work before, now the trend is consciousness. And it's beautiful to watch, but it's also interesting to watch because an embodiment has to happen, not just talking about it. And people only know me as I am now, and I think the story is very valuable. And the more that there's so many different spectrums of how I could tell my story of being an adoptee, that I was adopted, and how I was ailed by that, and how that created whatever consciousness I was living in that felt like suffering, and how those veils were lifted through that, of being depressed and feeling suicidal and feeling not connected and all of those things, and that I actually made it to the other side, is valuable. People need to hear that. They need to see, and I know as you do with your work, people see a vibrant, beautiful woman who's healthy, and they just assume that that's just been who you are your entire life. And the reality is no, we did a lot of work to move from the darkness into the light. Though the light was always there, there was shedding. And, my process has been 14 years. And it's amazing. It's been an amazing journey, but the before has to be told as well. Mm. And there's a lot of overcoming, and there's a lot of strong will, the desire, I think, from both of the type of work that we do of, I just want to feel good. And I was hungry to feel good. And so when I sit and work with students, it's really seeing like, how hungry are you to feel good? You have to have that desire that burns deeply within you. Otherwise, you'll drop the practices. Otherwise, you'll stop eating well. Otherwise, you'll just stay in the self-sabotaging patterns that you've created as a defense mechanism for whatever your story is in this lifetime of, going from challenge to beauty. That's what we're here to do. That's what the lotus flower is all about. It grows from the mud and it blooms into beauty. So we need to tell about the mud. The mud, and how the lotus came out of the mud and, is such the beautiful flower. Or, the same as the rose. Everybody loves a rose, but they never talk about the thorns. You don't focus on the thorns. You just focus on the fragrance and the beauty. And that's great, but there's still thorns. And knowing that before and after, that transformation, I think we all really thrive off of. And I think it's definitely the call of the time for those of us that have figured out how to get from point A. Not that it's about point A to point B, but the journey. What's the journey been? If you only see point B, what was before? I think that's super valuable.
It gives people hope and inspiration to hear that none of us are born perfect, that we really all have to work through it and heal our own thoughts and stories around our suffering. And we all really have to work up that courage. We're not just born as we appear on social media, we have to be humble and listen to what our own medicine is, and then take our own medicine. Mm-hmm. Keep taking our own medicine.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, I think that's huge. People need more hope in the world, and more examples. Mm-hmm. And I feel, I always felt that this is the call of the time for not one great Buddha, but for many great Buddhas. And my guru's guru would always say, it's the time of the angels descending down. And you can see it, you can feel it. And those of us that have chosen to be angelic, because we all have a choice to be angelic, or those that are the younger generation, they just are it. They don't need to come in with a lot of karma. They don't have a lot behind them. They just exist in it because of those of us parents that can hold them in that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So my next question is, please share about your lifestyle and your system and practice of natural medicine.
So my basis, what I like to call the activator, because it's a tree, right? This is why I love the yogic system, is there's a tree and a holistic approach. So there's two things that I teach and that I come from. And one is Vedic meditation and the other is Sattva yoga. And the yogic system is a beautiful system that's already been mapped out. So thankfully my ego doesn't have to come up with anything. It's already designed, and it's designed for us to awaken to. But the perspective that I come from is I work with Vedic meditation strongly. It's what I call the activator and the base, like the base of the house, the formation of the house. And why? Because we are humans, and Hu means light and Man means mind. Like man means mind. It's not like an anatomy to the body. We're all man, right? There is the feminine and the masculine, man is man. It's just a mind. And so because we work from mind first, our mind and our thoughts are most powerful. It's the frequencies that are emanating out. It's the field that we're creating. And so knowing that, that we're energy and we're thought, and thoughts create the energy and the impulses and the field that emanates out of us, I like to go in straight first and work with the mind and start clearing the mind. And so Vedic meditation, luckily, is, like you described so lovely in the beginning, it's an effortless technique. And a lot of people want to say, well, what's the difference between all these different meditations? And that's it. Though they all lead to effortlessness and time, because that's really what an enlightened being is, somebody that's moving frictionlessly through life. That's effortless. There's still challenges and whatnot, but how you move through the challenges are frictionless. And so the basis of this mantra-based meditation is that it's natural and it's simple and it's innocent, and that we're practicing effortless through the technique. And in that effortlessness, it creates the mind that will become effortless. It clears the mind, and it starts to go in and heal on a cellular level. And so this is where I see the power of everything. You literally have to have the direct experience of healing the body and the mind, literally clearing out the physiology and the psychophysiology to then start to activate all of these other things. And so knowing how you can go in and clear the mind, then it starts to open up you feeling relief of eating right? Prior to meditation, I was in the fitness world, and I taught nutrition and I taught how to transform the body, but it was all work. It was all work. It was work to eat what they call clean. Eat clean, have cheat days, and all these things. And I get it for that state of consciousness, but when you can come from a place of really clearing the mind and then working from that perspective, eating becomes just natural. And it's more getting people to move from a place of intuitiveness, which is what we just spoke about. So this intuitiveness of when our mind isn't so cluttered, we can start to hear what it is that the body needs. What does my body want? It's not what I think, what my intellect wants. It's what is it that my body feels depleted in, and that's what it needs to be refueled in. And without judgment, without guilt, without anything. And as we're creating a higher vibration in ourselves, that we're bringing things into our body from that perspective. And so moving from mind and then opening that spectrum up so that we can see all the different branches of yoga, so that we can start to create more high vibrational frequency in all areas of our life, from eating, from the music that we're listening to, from the house that we live in. Does our house feel good? Is it high vibration within our house? The people that we have in our life, are they high vibration? Are they bringing in positivity? Is the work that I'm doing feeling positive? Do I feel good when I'm going to my funding mechanism? Whether it's your passion or not, it's a funding mechanism, but do you feel good in it? And we start to move from this place because the base of our tree is being fed and watered by meditating, to clear the mind so that we can start to see what's actually charming in life. And charm is such a funny thing to say, because if you're not meditating and clearing your mind, charm is usually addiction. It's addiction, and it becomes confusing. And so when we start meditating, we can start to differentiate, in time, it takes practice, between addiction and charm. And charm is just the intuitiveness of what nature's guiding you to, or if you wanted to say what God's telling, relying or telling you to move towards. And so we have to have that clarity of knowing what addiction is and what our truth is. And so this is the platform of what I work with. To clear the mind first, then we can work in the body layer intuitively. And then once that all gets going, then we can start to activate and work with energy and starting to harness and become more masterful with our energy. So there's layers of what unfolds from my perspective.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Very beautiful, all the little pearls.
Yeah.
So you shared a little bit about your first guru and your teacher being your fitness trainer in high school, and I know of Maharishi and of Tom, but I'm wondering who else you have studied with and who you consider your teachers.
Yeah, I think everyone is my teacher. So, technically speaking, yes, my teacher from high school, right, he was the first platform of positive thinking and knowing consciousness. And then the next was, the example of somebody who came into my life was my birth mother. And she was the example of somebody who was meditating and doing yoga. She exposed me to everything. So in a funny way, she was my teacher, because she's the one that silently, gracefully planted the seeds for me to go in this direction. And then I found Tom, whose guru was Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. And Tom is a great custodian of the knowledge. And he is who taught me everything. From every spectrum, and having been able to live with him and travel the world with him, studied with him for 14 years and lived with him for 6. And so I had a very different training than I would probably say the entire community has ever had. So I have a very in-depth perspective of the teachings of what I've gathered. And then my other Guruji is Anand Mehrotra, who created Sattva Yoga. And Sattva Yoga, I feel, is the umbrella and of where yoga is moving towards. What he's created with Sattva Yoga is the holistic approach, and holistic meaning whole, right? And so we don't just choose one thing, we choose all things. It's like the greatest, and that's tricky to say. You don't want to say that to somebody who's just starting, because they don't know choose everything. It's, again, you're moving from addiction, so you don't know. But somebody who started to develop awareness and started to develop consciousness, they start to hone in, and when you say when in doubt, choose all, things start to activate and open up. And so Anand really taught me, he's tantric, comes from a tantric tradition that's Mother Divine. So you've got the strong essence of Mother Divine, and you've got the entire spectrum of yoga to work with, from Kundalini, from Laya Yoga, from Bhakti, from Kyan, Asana, all, and so many more, right? So these are just examples of what we use with Sattva Yoga, of Ayurveda, and all these different approaches to then start to bring in that wholeness to a being. Then we start to then learn how to use energetically, or start to master our energy of where are we putting our energy, what are we doing, how we become more efficient in that. And so he's a great master, he's a great teacher, and that always reminds me to live radically and live from my heart. Tom's really the practical side that brings all of this great grounded knowledge in the Vedic meditation. And then Anand is the playful, radical, fiery one. So he brings both sides of or both of them balance what I love. To be radically different, to not care what other people are thinking, to tune in to your own music, basically, and play that and be okay with that. And then on another level, there's teachers that aren't in body, they're in the unmanifest, and so Anandamayi Ma is definitely a huge influence, I feel. There's not a lot of example of strong, conscious women in this world. They're forming right now. We're creating history right now. Because a lot of women will come in and say, where are the women gurus? Where are the masters? And I always say, it's you sitting right in front of me. But there was Anandamayi Ma who was profound. And the beauty of consciousness is that it's not confined to body. And so she's really guided me in the essence of beyond body, and what the divine feminine is really about, and the grace and the beauty of being a conscious, masterful, feminine expression, essentially. And there's more masters within the tradition that guide me in consciousness, but those were the primary that activated that universal knowledge within me.
Thank you. And I appreciate you sharing more about Sattva Yoga, because I have never sought to ask questions about it. I've just heard the words, so I appreciate you explaining it, and now I'm interested in.
Yeah, I mean, it's powerful. It's powerful. I mean, sattva means purity, and so it's getting us to move into the place of pure mind, pure heart. And you haven't experienced it yet, because I've been waiting for the community to come in with clearer minds. This next year will be more sattva, more bringing in those offerings of harnessing the energy, because everyone's ready now. So
And it's going to be your 40th birthday.
Yeah.
It's perfect timing.
Yeah. It's amazing. I'm excited for the next year and for everyone. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What is your relationship with herbal medicine?
My relationship with herbal medicine. It's interesting. It's not my expertise for sure, but it's something that, like I said, I grew up in a family that was organic and holistic without knowing it, so it was just very natural.
Sounds very just intuitive in you.
Yeah, it's like innately in me. I don't really think twice about it. My consciousness just moves towards herbs first. I very rarely go to doctors. I don't recommend this for everybody because everybody's personality is different. I don't have health insurance. I don't invest in health insurance. I invest in preventative, holistic approaches. And so, because that feels good for me, it doesn't invoke fear in me. It does for other people. And so that's why other people should choose otherwise. So for me, how I've always approached my health and my son, who's 8, I always go holistic. I always go herbal, whether it's Chinese, working with acupuncturists and using Chinese herbs, or I'm in India and I'm doing panchakarma and I'm working with the Ayurvedic herbs. I find them to be very different in how I use them. I find Ayurveda to be preventative for long term. So the herbs that I take are very, common, good for the brain, or just basic things that I would be taking every day. And then when there's things that come up, I'll get a dry cough ailment, I'll go straight to my acupuncturist and I take the Chinese herbs because they hit it fast. It's gone within 24 hours. And where I don't take Chinese herbs every day. And so I find the balance between the two and kind of playing with them. And like I said, with my son and raising my son, from the minute of pregnancy, I never went to regular doctors. I did one ultrasound just to say, okay, it's real. And then I never went to a doctor ever again. Never did ultrasounds ever again. I just had a midwife that I hired 6 weeks prior to, and the rest was history. And we only worked from the herbal perspective. Everything through my labor was, I have no idea what they did, but I trust her. Everything was herbal from that perspective and holistic. To then after and postpartum, so working with placenta, taking that herbally. My midwife, amazing midwife, Shell Walker, based down in Arizona. She's very special. She creates the placenta in these beautiful little heart-shaped chocolates.
Oh my
and she's
God.
known for it. So I just eat chocolates, and it was epic.
Yeah.
So, and I never really experienced that postpartum between the meditating, and it doesn't mean that I didn't have waves of all kinds of things happening. But my approach has always been that way. Same with my son. I go to a doctor here in town that's a blend with integrative medicine. She does Western, but she's holistic as well. And her approach is always to enter from holistic and then move towards Western. And so that's really just been my philosophy. I don't think too much about it. The herbal medicine, I use it when needed, and then I don't really do much on a regular basis besides the Ayurvedic herbs, which would be like curcumin and
more adaptogenic herbs.
Yeah, where that's what's being put into my body. So things that stimulate the brain and cognitive memory, all of those types of things. So that's kind of my background.
Yeah.
I've had the great good fortune of not really having to deal with sickness. And I definitely think that's a lot to do with how my mom raised me. I just always feel like I can heal myself. So going into thinking in my mind and doing the meditation and staying preventative. So
a lot of gratitude for your parents.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good.
I feel blessed in that sense.
Yeah. Perfect. segue, what was the birth of your son like?
It was long. It was very long. I had, like I said, I did it very out of the box. It's the only child I had. I did a home birth. I did an all-natural birth. I'm very much, an advocate of women going back to empowering natural birthing. I don't know why. I guess it all changed in the 1970s when drugs came in and women just started getting injected and not feeling. And I'm about feeling. Not getting stuck in feelings, but feeling. And I just see the industry moving in a direction that is disempowering to women, from laying down at birth, which, you don't even lay on your back at all in pregnancy, especially towards the end. It's not the perfect position to birth. The best position is actually squatting down. If you were in the jungle, that's like we go back to our primal nature. That's where we're supposed to
be.
Right? And non-resistance. We could be unconscious and the baby would come out. So learning how to not resist. But the industry just really moving in the way of cesarean. And there's nothing wrong. Yeah. Everybody has their path because you can't control labor. And you might have the best intentions and then nature moves you to something else. But the fact that I see that a lot of doctors are instilling fear and booking in C-sections, I don't think it always has to go in that direction. So knowing that, and I have a funny ailment that most people don't know about. I faint at the sight of blood. I faint with needles. I faint in trauma centers. So I'm triggered by deep suffering and trauma. I take on the energy of it and my body just transcends and I drop. And so knowing that I didn't want to go have my child near a center that was called a trauma center. And
we're good.
Did a home birth. When I lived in Flagstaff, and I did a water birth because I feel that water is the most natural way that a human being can go from water to water. That it's the most soothing experience for a human being to enter from that perspective. So I wanted to give my son the least traumatic experience. I didn't want things pricked into him. When I had him, it was like a 30-hour, crazy labor, and it was beautiful in the sense of I really pressed my midwife, and luckily my partner knew me well, so at about 15 hours she says, we should go to the hospital for every reason, legally, blah, blah, blah. And thankfully they never came to me as I was sitting in the bathtub wanting to give up. They didn't come to me, and he said, no, I know her well, she'll make it through it. So they let me be, and they let me work through the karma that I needed to work through to enter into motherhood, because that's really what I feel like the journey is. And I had to let go of a lot of control and a lot of resistance and tightness, being overly controlled in my body from fitness, all of it. So I made it through. Like I said, all natural. I never did anything. The birth really was probably, the actual labor was about 5 hours from midnight until about 5 in the morning, and I did it on my own. Everyone was sleeping. My midwife gave me rhythm. I was in the water and I was doing lunges, and I really went into the zone of that meditative power and connected to my Shakti. It's the first time that I feel like I really connected to the depth of what I am. The Shakti being, the power of the divine feminine and the infinite organizing power, and just went into the zone. And luckily had my child and sat, with the umbilical cord still connected and holding him on my heart and having that skin to skin connection for I don't even know how long. Just being together. And I hope that birthing goes more in that direction of that naturalness, to be in your home environment, to be held in the power of what our bodies can do if we move out of trying. So yeah, my journey was beautiful. I had a lot of support. I had doulas that stayed and supported me, again, herbally. I had a dear colleague and friend who's an Ayurvedic chef that came in, and he cooked all sattvic, pure foods, so that my brain was supported and my nervous system was supported, and I was getting the right fats and all of those things to help support the woman in the new journey of motherhood. So yeah, I feel really, really graced to have had that experience of being able to walk in nature and in the labor, to go outside, pacing outside barefoot and walking through the upstairs just totally naked, and just being in my crazy Kali Ma, really. Just pressing every edge and every spectrum that I didn't know existed. So yeah,
Profound.
it was super profound, and very, very empowering to step into motherhood and ownership of you deciding what's best for you and your child. It's like the beginning of that platform.
That mama bear.
Totally.
It's beautiful. Explains why he's so calm too. So innately calm.
Yeah, I mean, and I meditated through my whole entire pregnancy. And what women, I think, aren't aware of is the power of, we're creating a bliss chemistry within our bodies. And this bliss chemistry, because your child is living off of you and what your vibration is, what your chemistry is, what your food intake is. That's what my child was experiencing. So he was experiencing bliss every day, twice a day, as I was meditating. And as a pregnant mama that's an established meditator, you can meditate more. It can happen, a few times a day, because we're creating a structure of a human being. So yeah, he had that. That's what was going into his brain chemistry. That's what was going into his body. And had the great good fortune of going to India in the very beginning of my pregnancy and doing panchakarma treatments. And in that Ayurvedic doctor, Dr. Raju, is a saint. He's unbelievable. He's very high state of consciousness. It takes him maybe 5 seconds. He reads your pulse, but he doesn't really need to, because his consciousness is so profound. He knows everything that's ever happened to you in this lifetime, physically, mentally, emotionally, and past lives. And he knew the minute I walked in. I was 6 weeks pregnant in India. And he said, "Oh, you're pregnant, and more than likely you're having a boy." And I never knew. I kept it all like a surprise. And he's like, "Very, very strong. You're very strong. Baby, very strong." And he's like, "Eat anything and everything." And coming from fitness, of being rigid, and still in the beginning years of my meditating, maybe 4 or 5 years into it, I was still, rigid, like eat clean and this and that and all of those things. And when he gave me permission, it was very, it was huge. It's huge that I could be okay and like drink Coca-Cola every once in a while. I'd never had soft drinks, or a lot happened in my pregnancy of letting myself just eat foods that my parents never let me have. Like Wonder Bread with Skippy peanut butter. But it was really coming from the consciousness of accepting. And that's where I learned that what you put into your body and how you eat really has to do with your state of consciousness. That though those were low quality foods, the joy that I had from eating it and the acceptance that it was okay is what made all the difference.
And then that vibration went into him.
Exactly. And all those foods, of course, faded out because I just allowed for myself to be okay with everything and not judge, which was huge. So he had that good experience. I didn't watch violent films. Everything that I created in my pregnancy was high vibration. He only heard chanting music or classical things that were high vibration. So yeah, he has that deserving power. So
that could be, this whole pregnancy story could potentially be like a forward in your meditating with children book that you're writing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. So many things to unfold.
So next question is along those lines. What was it like meditating with a newborn and a toddler, and how has it evolved as he's gotten older?
I think the great thing goes back again to the style of Vedic meditation. That Vedic meditation is coming from an effortless perspective. It comes from the comfort, right? So how we sit when we're meditating, how the approach that if you're interrupted, that you can open your eyes and answer questions to little ones and close your eyes and go back. And it's not rigid. It's not rigid, and it can be a shared experience. And so what I find is that people with meditation tend to think, or parents think, oh, well, I'm a parent and I have many kids. And what most people don't know about me, because you know me now as a single mom with my child, is that at that time, I wasn't a single mom. I had a partner who had 4 other children living in the household. So I had a 9-year-old, I had a 10-year-old, I had a 13-year-old, and I had a 14-year-old, as well as a newborn. And so I had the experience of my son's first 5 years of his life of being a stepmother to teenagers and a newborn, while still meditating and having this conscious lifestyle. And because I had a partner who was conscious as well and a meditator as well, we found rhythms of, we very rarely meditated together, that we made this priority and essential. I would breastfeed and meditate with my child. I'd sit in the rocking chair, and they had like the little boppy or whatever it was, and I knew he felt safe and held. And I would just sit and close my eyes, and I wasn't rigid to having a deep experience. It just was letting my mind get cleared through the process. So I was never attached to what kind of meditation I was having. Sometimes I would lay down, because that's, when you're breastfeeding, sometimes lying down on your side feels better. And I would still meditate. And I still had that, I could meditate 10 minutes, as many times that feels comfortable throughout the day. And so I would do that. And because I wasn't rigid to what my practice looked like, if it was perfect, if it was ideal, I didn't really care. I was just doing it. And I did it every day, and I never really thought twice about it. It helped me adapt, because you have the child, but as a new mother, you're a new person with a new body, with a new title, and a new many responsibilities. And it's extremely overwhelming to then step in that space where the culture just is like, oh yeah, no big deal, you had a baby, and nobody cares. I don't know what it is. It's bizarre. And as the woman is sitting there with staring at her body that's distorted and different and tired, because it's not sleeping more than 2 hours at a time and feeding another human being. Oh my God. It's like meditation was my only way through it. And so, like I said, in the beginning years with the breastfeeding and whatnot, or having him in the room where I put him in a little player area, and then I would sit maybe 5 feet away from him, and I'd just meditate. Or at night, or nap time, I put him down, and I'd sit next to where I put him down, whether it was in a Moses basket or his crib. We did co-sleeping, so he was mainly around me all the time. I just sat next to him. I sat and I meditated. And he's grown up that way. It's still, now he's 8, and he loves when I meditate next to him as he goes to sleep. So my son's really been brought up in an environment that's supportive. It's not exclusive. So I don't do my practice to where he can't enter the room. He can't be a part of it. And so he grew up where, as a toddler, I would kids emulate you. So I would just say, come in. Come sit on Mama's lap. And he would sit, and he would close his eyes and put his hands into mudras, and he would, and he was really trying. And it would be for 30 seconds, but I would say, very good, and now go play. And go play means 5 feet away from me. and that I was okay because noise is a part of meditation, and life is a part of meditation. And so he's always known that. If he was potty training and I'm sitting and I'm getting into my meditation, and 5 minutes into it, he comes in the room, Mama, and he has to go poo-poo. I get up and I do what I need to do, and then I go back and I sit. And so I think it was really powerful to stay with the practice, having it not be perfect, and inviting him into the space. So he's always been invited in, whether I'm doing pujas and he's a part of that, or he sees me sitting and he sits, whether he knows what he's doing or he doesn't, that there's that invitation. And then the boundaries of when language was built and he could start to understand that I would say, this is mommy's quiet time, and this is what makes mommy a good mommy and not a yelling mommy. Because if I'm not meditating, my adaptability and my resiliency is lower, and I have the possibility of yelling at a little cute, sweet person. And so I know when I meditate that is less likely. I'm not perfect, but it's less likely to happen. And so he knew that. And I would just say that. It makes it a happy mommy, a good mommy. And so he gives me that space. And so he's just been brought up that way, to where it's inclusive. Even if he interrupts, he never gets yelled at. That he's invited in, that it's okay, that he's always taken care of. But this is also priority. And he knows what the outcome of it, why I'm doing it. And so that's been huge. To be a mother, and a mother of many different spectrums, stepmother to many children, and all the teenagers knew as well in the household, and they were all meditators, and finding a way in the environment of making this just a natural way of existence. My son doesn't know any other way. He has no clue. So, and that anything is okay. He can do whatever he wants. So.
And I remember him saying that when I was giving him a massage, that he meditates for 7 minutes now because he's 7, so maybe it's 8. Is that how too as he grew up?
Yeah, so from the tradition of Vedic meditation, when you teach a child, the child has to have worthy inquiry. It can't be the parents that say, I want my child to learn meditation. And that's a rule of thumb just in life. You can't make your mom meditate, and you can't make your friends meditate. They have to have the worthy inquiry to then want to learn. Because then it goes back to, you have to have the fire and the burning to want to feel good in life and want to move from that place. And so same with children. So when they're ready, they'll come to you. And when Narayan was 4, he wanted to learn. And so with Vedic meditation, with really young ones, what we do is it's all mantra based. It's sounds and vibrations that we all work with, and same with children. So they get what we call their word of wisdom, and they receive their word of wisdom, and they don't do sit down meditation, because they're too young. And so they receive their sound and vibration, and they can use the sound and vibration when they're playing, during nap time, sitting in the back of the car on the way to school, anytime they feel like using the sound and vibration, they use it with the eyes open, which is profound. So they're creating this beautiful vibration within them. And then when they, again, are old enough, maybe it's 7 or 8, it just depends on the child, they feel like sitting, then they sit for the amount of minutes of their age. So if they're 5, that would be 5 minutes. If they're 7, it's 7 minutes. If they're 13, it's 13 minutes. And so they start to develop their capacity to be able to sit. And as a parent that is a meditation teacher, I don't make him do anything, ever. I might ask, are you meditating? But I never bring judgment. It's always from a neutral place, and let him develop his own practice. So, whether he's sitting every day for 7 minutes, I don't see him do that, but he's doing something. It could be still where he's floating around, and sometimes then he's sitting, but he has that invitation of then moving in his desire. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wonderful parenting.
Thanks.
So I'm noticing the time. Let me see, maybe. I think maybe just asking if, just because of timing, if there's anything else you want to add.
I don't know. I mean, if you want to ask.
What are your weaknesses physically and emotionally? I kind of know a little bit just because I read your eyes. But.
It's funny because I tend not to go in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
But at this point, and I don't really think like that. I don't really think in weaknesses and strengths anymore. But what I do know is that when I am headed in the direction of deficiency and I'm possibly not fueling myself in the proper ways, it tends to be my liver. My liver and my lungs that tend to go out on me. That's a sign for me to start paying a little more attention. I feel grateful that I find the right people, whether I'm conscious of it or not, but I'll just move in the direction of finding the right people that then relay what it is that I need to balance and move from that way.
I think with meditation, it keeps us out of our strengths or out of our weaknesses, so we're just so balanced. And I really like the word that you said about in the direction of something. We don't notice it when it's necessarily weak. It just it starts to change from that balanced preventative state.
You start to see, I think, you start to catch the direction before you can start to move more preventatively.
Just
in that. And then just being open. I don't know. I'm always open to the information that basically the universe is just bringing me that maybe I might have been ignoring or just simply not seeing. Funny. I don't know. I don't go in the direction of weaknesses. But I'm always fascinated to hear, because I come from just how can I refine? Mm-hmm. So always open to hearing how can I refine and taking whoever's expertise, because I'm not expert in everything. So if you're reading my eye, to really hear what you have to say and then really feel into what connects and move from that space. Because I think in different stages we have different weaknesses at different times. How our body is developing or lacking, how we're aging and all.
Climate.
Travel, all of these different types of things. Or, going back to women, moon cycles, and understanding where, we're lacking through our shedding and our purifying and understanding that. So I think there's always new perspectives coming in of, never really thought about that. Never really thought about the moon cycles and that I'm low on my blood, and now I have this awareness where, yes, that was my weakness, but it really was just being unaware. And so now that awareness is there, and now I can just work with that.
It's shone our flashlight, so it's not dark or weak anymore.
Exactly. It's just, I'm aware of that, so now I can build my blood every month and have a knowingness before my moon cycle and after my moon cycle, and be aware of the foods that I'm eating and taking in, and fatigue and this and that, to be more mindful.
I'm noticing, I think I met you maybe 2 years ago with Soma at her house, and just watching your irises change from my perspective. I mean, I haven't magnified them since that first time 2 years ago, and then a year and a half ago, I think. But just watching how your eyes have become this deep blue sapphire crystal. I feel like they had maybe a little bit more white, so it's just so cool from my nerdy iridologist perspective to watch your irises change. And I mean, there's no way you cannot do the work in this practice. So you're doing the work, and then it's reflecting and it's just beautiful.
I mean, it's powerful. I don't have the expertise that you have, but eyes are the vessel into the soul. And you can see that. You can see the vibrancy. I used to always sit with Tom and I would look at pictures of Maharishi from when he was very young, like in his 30s, and he was a biology major in university, and it was before he had really gone into the spiritual spectrum. And he looked so different, and his eyes weren't alive yet. And so from the consciousness perspective, and as time would go, and he was rising more into the Maharishi, and becoming in 50s, 60s, 70s, there was literally like one point where one eye was still kind of not alive and the other was just bright and alive, and you could see the consciousness that was shifting and awakening. It's just really beautiful. You can see that spectrum, and from your expertise of every little nuance of the depth, the color, how strong everything's starting to vibrate, the clarity. And I think when I had seen you, it was still, I had spent, maybe it was like a year and a half prior to, in India for 4 months doing the rounding, the very deep purifying work. And from day one for 4 months till the end, I was doing this particular technique every day for hours. Deep meditation, deep purifying. And at a certain point, it got up to 14 hours a day. And that was in between everything that I was doing and learning. And then coming off of that training, it literally takes 3 years for the body to really integrate. The purifying, it's almost more of the purification happens away from when you're doing the technique. So my body was very in the beginning time of balancing. And like I said, that's where that time was probably most essential for me, learning the power of medicinal herbs, of from my perspective of Ayurveda. I had to go to India and I had to see my body weak and literally be told that I was weak and that I needed to create this new resiliency. And it's because my body was repatterning from all of the purifying and work that I had done, deep, like new computer, basically, new hardware, but I had to support the new hardware. And coming out of that was a real journey. It taught me the power of Ayurveda and of herbs, and that they're essential aspect in the holistic approach for us to maintain, prevent, and enrich, essentially, that supportive nature. That's where I learned, okay, meditation isn't everything. It's a spectrum. It can be the foundation, but then there's so much more. And so, my body was just coming into not being, whoa! But it's the herbs and all of those things that had to help balance that out. And then now, years later, it's fun to see the stabilizing and more strength. So
Rewiring, it's beautiful.
Yeah, it's huge, and support has to come from all areas. Great understanding. So it's amazing work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Last question. How can people find out more about your teachings and your offerings and upcoming courses?
On my website. So I have my website, which is yashodadevima.com. All of that all my courses, my retreats, they're all on there. I'm in development of another website in the future that's coming out, so it'll be called thesubtlemind.com. And so it'll be more comprehensive programming for mind, body, and energy. And in future, I'm in the process of recording specific types of meditations that will be on iTunes and Spotify and whatever, for people to start working from that perspective if they can't come see me. But people, through that, if you live in different cities, if you're not here in Boulder, and there's worthy inquiry, you can always email me and see if it's possible for me to come to your city and start creating a community and start teaching. So it's not just limited. It's not limited to Boulder. I go to New York, I go to LA, I teach in India, and wherever the call is, really. So
Thank you so much for this space and questioning and sharing, and I'm so grateful. Thank you.
I'm super grateful. It's been beautiful to watch your journey and beautiful to connect with you. And like I said, I love your work and what you're doing, and love watching the practice become stronger within you. It's beautiful.
Thank you. Namaste.
Thank you. Namaste.